I thought my parents' life was the American dream. I'm not a first generation Latina. You know, my family's been here more like third generation. Both of my parents were born and raised in East LA, and so for me, growing up in a family that was very much at the time in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and 80s, I very much grew up in a what they would consider middle class family. And so my American dream was getting married, and living a life similar to my parents. My path absolutely changed, and really early on. I think a lot of it had to do. Well, I know a lot of it had to do with the choices I made early on. You know, being a rebellious kid, not really following the path my parents took. I'm very proud of both my parents. My dad did at least get some continued education. He went to LA Trade School, and he got a position at Pac Bell, which is AT&T today, and he worked there for 40 years. So he had an amazing pension, and I sort of took for granted. I think a lot of it was taking my parents for granted. Like, they'll always be there and they'll always financially bail me out. So yeah, maybe if I don't finish high school, no big deal. And unfortunately, I was very much following the path of my environment. And so it wasn't until years later that I realized I needed to do better. And most importantly, I needed to do better for my kids. Getting pregnant at 19, that was the first time I said, you know what, I need to go back to school. So I just went to a little trade school and try to figure out, you know, I at least need to figure out how I'm going to work in an office and be able to provide at the time for my daughter. So I was a single mom at 19. And, but it wasn't until 92 when my daughter Erica was born, and I was 24. Now I had her with someone else. He had two kids, and who were 2 and 3, and I absolutely fell in love with these two little boys. And so I suddenly found myself in a family and having 4 kids, and then not being able to work. I really, at the end of the day, I really wanted to make sure my kids had everything they needed. So my path has absolutely changed in a way that, or started to change in a way that I knew I needed to do better for my kids, and that's actually what got me. They're the ones that inspired me to even start school. So actually, I was 35 years old when I started college, and I needed to figure out this college thing because I wanted them to get their college degrees. I didn't want them to did everything in my power to make sure none of my kids were going to drop out of high school. And so I started at a community college at 35, thinking I was going to go back and become a nurse or social worker and help families with children with disabilities, because there was so many resources, and unfortunately, so many families don't realize that there's resources available to them. And I just wanted to help families as well. So the biggest struggle I faced was when I decided to go to college. Um, my husband at the time did everything in his power to keep me from going. I think at the end of the day, he knew my part of my plan for going to college was to eventually be financially independent. I was very, I was financially dependent on him, and that was very clear in our marriage. It made it very difficult. In fact, in my first year after Chafee, I didn't have enough for my books, and so I went and talked to the counselor, and I explained to her that I didn't know if I was going to be able to continue. I was in the Puente program, which Puente program at Chafee absolutely changed my life. I when I was after the first year, I told her I didn't have enough money for my books, and about a week later, I got a $500 scholarship in the mail from the Esperanza Scholarship Foundation. And Esperanza means hope. And so this foundation gave me the hope I needed when I needed it. And that $500 actually got me through another year, which allowed me to apply for more scholarships. And I started working at Chafee. And so mostly it was a lot of financial struggles. But in the end, all those experiences now have inspired me to help others, especially for students, especially first generation students. But my best friend, I would say she always had she had a lot more smarts than any of us, and um, I saw her making better decisions earlier on. So, but at the same time, none of them were dealing with the situation I was dealing with. I was having a severely disabled child. Um, you're in this pretty much on your own. This was when we were in our 20s, and so I see that um, the community of support that I needed at the time wasn't really there. And so they were sort of raising their kids and moving on with their lives, when I felt like I was more isolated, um, from everything. So my struggles were much different, mostly because I was trying to do everything I can to make sure. So when Erica was born, they told me she would live 6 months to a year. Thank God she lived, and she was with us for 13 years. But it was 13 years. It was a lot, being in and out of the hospital. Erica was on hospice 3 times. Every time she ended up in the hospital, I didn't know if she was going to come home. And to be honest, it wasn't. There was people that always came by my side, but to truly say that somebody was there for me, I really didn't have that support system. So that's where my struggles were very different for my friends. But I think that in a lot of ways is what showed me that if I could get through this, and Eric and my daughter could get through everything she's deals with every day. Really, at the end of the day, is what empowered me to show me that I can do more. My parents never stopped believing in me, even though I didn't really believe in myself. So wasn't the advice they gave me, it was more the support. So I'm always thankful for their unconditional love. Sorry, I didn't mean to, this is emotional for me, but yeah, they were always the support, and they never stopped believing in me. So I'm forever thankful for that. And my Chafee chapter, when I decided to start taking classes at Chafee, um, when I got accepted into the Puente program. Now, this was the first time I had a mentor in my life, and then my English professor. So, be part of the Puente program. Puente means bridge, so it's bridging you from 2-year to 4-year. And but the great thing about the Puente program, especially those who've been out of school for a long time, they're preparing you for college writing. And so I had the same English professor for a whole year, Dr. Laura Hope, and then the counselor who's assigned to you, you have your counselor for all the time you're at Chafee. So Monica Molina, the counselor, who also became my mentor. Actually, both of these women became my mentors. So they have made a tremendous difference in my life. In fact, there has been a couple of times I've gone back and spoken at Chafee, and they have been absolutely a positive influence in my life, and that I'm forever grateful for. For me, so a little bit of background about my family. So my dad was very involved with the Chicano movement, and I think it's helped me because with my dad being involved with the Chicano movement and having some of these connections and the influence he had in the community, and now me later in life, connecting, especially with the Latino community, and being proud of our culture. In fact, I didn't realize I was Mexican. I thought I was Chicana, because I didn't realize Mexican was actually a race. When you asked my dad who we were, we were Chicano or Chicana. And so that's, I think it's been an absolute, I think that's what has empowered me. My dad very much made sure that we were proud Mexicans, Chicanos, Chicanas. Um, and so for me, it's been all positive. Of course, you know, I've seen the other side of this, but for the most part, I've seen a lot of positive things happening, you know, and I can say my dad had a little something to do with that, because he was fighting for us during a time I didn't even realize my dad was fighting for our community. So I think, like I said, going back to my dad, I think it empowered me more, um, because my dad made sure that we grew up being proud of who we are and where we come from. So I never, I think the only time I've ever questioned myself is my own limiting use, that I've done to myself. And I think as humans, we all do that. It's never has never been a reflection of being a Latina. So my experience has been much different than, like, say, example, I've mentored a lot of students, and one of the ones that I mentor is a dreamer. Um, so of course he's had a much different experience than I have. I've been there with him and for him through all the struggles he's had, from trying to become a citizen. I mean, he was here at the age of 1, had no idea he was undocumented, and and not until he was ready to go to play high school football. I mean, I'm sorry, until he was ready to play college football, and he realized he was undocumented. And at the time, the college that was going to give him a full scholarship decided to take it away from him. He was going to go to Arizona State. Found out he was a dreamer, and they took the scholarship away. And fortunately, I met him actually at Laverne, and he was playing football there. But then, unfortunately, he ended up in a position where he could not afford school at a private institution anymore, and so he had to go to community college. Which at that time I had met him, I was trying to, you know, help him get scholarships and get, you know, support him as much as I could to make sure that he applied to different scholarships. So at the time, I told him, well, why don't you go back to community college and then transfer to public, you know, that'll put you in a better position. And so the hardships and the trials and everything he's been through has been inspiring to me, because he's had to struggle for so many years. I'm so proud of him. He's graduating. He did graduate officially. He was going to walk across that stage. In fact, he was going to walk across that stage in May, and commencement has been canceled. So again, another situation where something's been taken away from him. And so for especially for dreamers, there's a lot of things that I feel that have been taken away from them, which seems completely unfair. And still they get up every morning and they work and they go to school, and they're just amazing people. So that's how my experience has been very different from his. So, but I'm so proud of him. Well, first of all, I do a lot of prayer. Um, I God has been my guiding light through life's toughest challenges, and but ultimately continue education, and a lot of mentors. Um, I actually have an executive coach who's made a tremendous difference in my life, and so it's having creating the support system that I needed. Going back to my daughter, sort of feeling like I was doing this on my own. I never took the time to ask people for help. I find myself asking more people for help. And I learned that when I was at Chafee. Like, I just got to a point where I wasn't afraid to ask for help anymore. And so some of the techniques I use today is asking for help when I need it. Furthering my education. I'm constantly either, I have 5 strengths, and one of them, my top one, is learner. So one of the things I'm constantly doing is trying to learn something new. Yeah, having mentors and people, and surround yourself with people who are going to help you be successful. Um, I think that's really, uh, if I was speaking to my younger self, that's absolutely what I would say is don't ever stop believing in yourself. You can do it. And there are people out there who will help make that happen, make your dream happen. Absolutely.